Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host for today. We are talking UFC Saudi Arabia. We've got Israel Adesanya versus Nassourdine Imavov. A great card, stacked card here. Nice and early, 9 a.m. on the East Coast and noon start time on the main card. So got a little kicked off the Saturday, nice and early, and did not like the fact that we were off last weekend. Not the greatest because we had our holiday break. We come back for 2 events and we had another break. Didn't like that, but we have 11 straight UFC events coming up. Couldn't be any more excited about it. Awesome Super Bowl next weekend. We also have a great UFC pay-per-view card also on Saturday, and then just a run of events. So what we're doing here at Wager Talk is we are going to be giving $10 off my client pay pack, $10 off, and that's going to be using code KICK10. Kick10 at checkout. And what you can do there is get $10 off my client play pack for this weekend. And with that being said, if you want to get involved with that, link down in the description. If not, we are going to talk this weekend's card, and we're talking the main event, Israel Adesanya versus Nassourdine Imavov. Now, this is really a great fight here. You know, overall, I think it's really a great fight, great main event here. You've got Israel Adesanya, who's minus 160 on the comeback here. You've got Nassourdine Imavov plus 135. You got the former champion, who high-level kickboxer, coming up against Nassourdine, the Russian sniper, good striking, does have wrestling. Now, the big issue here that pretty much everyone's going to be talking about is Adesanya done? Is the decline done? Is this the end of his career, or at least approaching it? And that's the thing that you really kind of got to look at here. And going back, the first thing you got to look at is the fact that, yes, he's 35 years old. And that already is not the greatest sign here. And you kind of also have to know that there is going to be a tick down. There has to be a tick down. There has to be some kind of decline at a certain point. Once you start getting on the wrong side of 35 years old, that's what starts to happen here in this sport. And you also look at now, what he's done in the cage. And 1-3 out of his last 4, not the worst thing ever. You definitely can't think that that's the worst thing ever because of who he lost to. 3 champions. Ended up losing to Dricus Du Plessis, Sean Strickland, Alex Pereira, high-level guys, guys that just have been there. And yes, it's hard to look at that and say, hey, he's losing to top-level guys. And is it really just that he's fighting the high-level guys and losing, or is it the fact that he's really starting to become on decline? Now, I do think that there is a lot of MMA mileage at this point, especially at 35 years old. It is going to be tough. And, stylistically, we know what we're getting from Adesanya normally, where he's got great distance management, great footwork, switches stances very smooth, snapping kicks, works the legs very well, chops away at the legs, and just staying safe, staying out of range. And, a lot of the spots that he's had a big reach advantage to be able to go out there, work at range, work at distance. And those are some things that have worked for him throughout his career. Here he's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage. But when I'm going back and looking at everything, it's just there are multiple red flags here, I think, on the Adesanya side. And it's tough to kind of look at it. Now you're looking at a price tag of minus 160. It is definitely tempting when you're looking at that against the guy Imavov, who has not had to face these elite level guys as yet. Starting to get up there, started to beat a couple good guys, but it's a lot big difference. And I think the biggest thing for me is the fact that Adesanya seems like that killer instinct is gone. It's hard to even say that. The guy has been an absolute beast. But it's just at this point, you really do see it. He turned in from being this high level, kind of knockout finisher kind of guy to just really kind of a point fighter working on the outside. And, yes, I do think that the Hail Mary that he landed on Pereira, knocked him out, was really fluky, to be honest with you. I was at that fight there, but thought it was pretty fluky. Really was an ending sequence for him. But you even kind of looked after that, fighting Sean Strickland, this to me is, and the 2 biggest things really for me when I'm looking at it was the fight with Sean Strickland, where Strickland just moved forward. He threw basically a simple 1-2 combination and really just stopped everything that Adesanya could offer, smothered the kicker, kept them on the back foot. Adesanya wasn't able to kind of find any range. He wanted more space, and Strickland was willing to just stand in the middle and trade. And it worked out very well for him in that spot. And that's one thing there that's something Imavov could possibly implement in this fight. But also the fact that, Adesanya has been in multiple 5-round fights, many of them. And he has just shown to start to get a little gassy. The cardio to me is ticking down. And I think that that also is slowing down some of his output overall. You saw it against Dricus du Plessis where, Dricus is a beast, but you also, he was pushing forward. And there was times even against Strickland, he was stumbling, falling backwards, just looked like he was almost unmotivated at certain points. And I think that's going to be very tough. Now you're about to face, Imavov, who is a guy that's going to push forward, a guy that can mix it up, can dictate the pace when you're talking about just moving forward, putting pressure, landing the big shots, not giving the space to Adesanya at any point to kind of keep moving forward. And also you got to look at it, he's going to do the same thing. He's going to keep Adesanya on that back foot. He's going to keep moving forward. And also the key here is the takedowns. Now, Adesanya is known to have good takedown defense, but this is another thing that's starting to tick downward overall. And I think Imavov can move forward, land big shots, stay in its face. And not that Imavov is going to sell out, completely for takedowns. But I do think that he's going to look to push forward and mix it up and just keep Adesanya off balance here. And I think the more dangerous guy at this point is probably Nasruddin. And I think that the finishing upside is probably on Nasruddin's side. So for Adesanya to outland, Imavov over 5 rounds, in Saudi Arabia is asking for a lot, especially at a -160 price tag here. I think that Imavov plus 135 is the side. I think he's going to move forward, mix it up. And any of those close rounds, I do believe will go for Imavov. So in this spot here, I'm going Nasruddin Imavov in the main event. Next one here we're going to talk about is Shamil Magedov, -180. We've got Michael Paige at plus 150. Now, this should be a striker's delight here. We've got two guys that are going to look to kickbox, going to look to throw, and they're going to mix it up throughout this fight. And I'm definitely, this is one I'm very, very interested to see how this all plays out. Now, you've got Shamil, 15-0, flashy guy, does a lot of flashy stuff out there. But the one thing, was really when you're looking at this fight is that, the opinion of Shamil, at first it was, this guy is way overrated. He really can't do anything. It looks like he's got, terrible cardio and he's not really mixing it up very well. And all those combinations are not as slick. And there was a lot of talk about kind of that part. Now, he does a double back fist and all of a sudden, he's a -180 in a spot where it's a step up in competition, starts to become red flags a little bit there. But I think the fact that Shamil does mix it up, we can look to chop away at the legs. He does throw some nice body kicks. I think he's getting a little bit more comfortable out there against these level of opponents. And I think that can help him. But the red flag for me is how hittable Shamil is. And that to me really is going to start to see what really Paige can do in this spot. He's got a 42% striking defense for Magedov, not that great overall. And he's just open for counters. He's a guy that can be countered, can be hit. And that's really where somebody like Paige, who is more calculated, is going to be able to mix it up a little bit better. And Shamil, not, just defensively is just lackluster overall. And that's something that I do think Paige can start to find success. Now, the big thing with Paige is that his footwork is fantastic. His distance management is really high level overall. Now, the big knock on him is definitely going to be the fact that he's 37 years old. Comes over to the UFC later in his career, are things starting to, same thing when we're talking about Adesanya, wrong side of 35 years old, that is going to be a problem. But you also got to look at just what he's done really recently. And one of the big things that we look at is the first thing is what he did against Kevin Holland. Now, say what you will about Kevin Holland. He is, he doesn't have grappling, you take him down, he's a fish out of water, very big vulnerability for him there. But in a pure striking fight against Paige, Venom Paige looked great. I thought, the range, his unorthodox style, mixing it up a little bit. It's just he really kept Holland, confused. He wasn't able to get comfortable out there, and he was able to find a way to get the victory. And then you also got to look at against Ian Garry. And Ian Garry, we do put him up there as a really solid striker, another guy with great distance management, good footwork, can mix it up a little bit, and now he had to go to the grappling, to the wrestling against Paige, and if you look at it, Paige was really the same thing. Unorthodox, confusing, keeping Ian Gary very uncomfortable. He was outlanding him. And then really it came down to Ian Gary looking for takedowns that really locked into victory. But if you look at the significant strikes landed, it was 21-19 in favor of Paige. The only difference was the fact that Ian Gary had 2 takedowns at 8 minutes of control time. So that's going to obviously help him out, that he was deserving of the victory, of course. But it does show you that if Shara, who is not going to shoot for takedowns, I just don't see that happening in this spot here. If this is going to be a pure striking match against a guy with the footwork of Paige, I think he can do a lot of great things in this spot. He's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage here. I think he can mix it up a little bit. He's the same thing where he does some smooth stance switching and able to kind of mix up the targets a little bit. The only issue is that he can be low volume, and that can allow Shara to kind of find opportunities there. But with that being said, I think he's more accurate. I think that he's going to find more opportunities to land. And can he knock out Shara? That's going to be a question because, again, we're in Saudi Arabia. Close rounds can go to Magedov, and that's just part of the game here. But when you're looking at it, I just think at this point, I'm not high on Shara overall. And if people liked him against Petrosian, not long ago, I think they should really like him against Michael Paige, getting the victory here. So at plus money for Michael Paige. So I got to go Michael Paige here, plus 150. I think he gets the job done. Going to be close. Going to be maybe some dicey scorecards, but I'm going with Paige to get the job done. Next one here we're going to talk about is Mike Davis, minus 140 against Faraz Ziam, plus 124. Now, the interesting part here is there's some interesting line movement here. This line opened up Mike Davis, minus 275 at some books. Now we're looking at it as, well, you also have Ziam, who was plus 200. And now we're looking at it, big line movement, money coming in on Ziam. You're definitely seeing a lot of it. And I don't agree with it. I don't agree with the line movement here. I think there's just too much going on. Ziam in this spot here. I do think it's big recency bias. Big time recency bias, I think, in the marketplace that's really pushing this line very far down. I think it's one, Ziam's win, which we're going to talk about in a second. And then also, the inactivity of Mike Davis. He's had like 5 fights in the last 5 years. And, just the activity being low, I think also does bring some question marks, obviously, when you're talking about that. But on Ziam's side, I do think the victory over Matt Frevola, the 3rd round knockout victory, beautiful knockout. I think it's being a little too overstated in this spot here. And I think that really the big part is that, listen, Matt Frevola, friend of the show, was on here. I talked to the guy, great person. But now he's at the point where, he's 34 years old. He's been through absolute wars. There's been moments where he's been boom or bust, he's really knockout or bust kind of situation for him. And in this spot here, the takedowns really is the story in that spot here where Faraz can be susceptible to being taken down, and Matt couldn't get him down. Now, is it because Matt is just kind of starting to decline or just kind of the end of his career a little bit more? Or was it Ziam really elevating his takedown defense? That's really the conversation when it comes down to that. And the problem, I think, is that that's being overstated. It's almost like, Frevola, he stopped all of Frevola's takedowns. Well, Frevola was only 1 for 3. Frevola shot 3 takedowns, got 1. And then after that, after he was starting to look for takedowns, Ziam was getting his opportunities for level changes. So it was definitely a mixed bag there where the optimism, I think, that Ziam is going to easily defend these takedowns, because I think with this line movement coming in, that's what the marketplace is telling you. They're saying Ziam is going to be able to stand. He's going to be able to strike and outland, Mike Davis on the feet. Now he's facing an explosive wrestler in Mike Davis, who is, a guy who's going to come forward, who's going to be relentless, who's going to be shooting for takedowns. You've got Ziam there that is a guy who is low volume when it comes to striking volume, and these lapses in action where he's, at distance or he's looking for space. I think that's where you can see Mike Davis bullying forward, looking for takedowns, looking for opportunities. And you also got to add in, which is probably the big red flag on this particular fight, is the fact that Ziam, one fight prior to Matt Frevola, that Claudio Puelles, who is really a jiu-jitsu guy that has very limited wrestling, not much physicality. And he was able to secure 7 takedowns on ZM. Now, I don't that although yes, it wasn't the greatest showing for Puelles overall, but the fact that the takedowns were there and he has no control. We've seen him in other fights where he's just sliding off guys. Guys are able to get up, but the takedown opportunities can be there for him. That was the most takedowns that Claudio has had out of 8 UFC fights by far. He's had 7 in that spot. So to me, that's a little bit of a red flag that you're about to face a guy who's going to be relentlessly shooting, who's going to push a pace, who's going to get in your face. And I think also the fact that, Mike Davis is going to have the strength and physicality advantage big time in this spot here. I think he's going to be able to bully him, get in front of him, take him down. He's got good heavy top control, good heavy top pressure, can keep him there, ground and pound, hunt for submissions. And I think he can rinse and repeat that throughout all 3 rounds. And I think that's just not going to allow Ziam and his low volume to find opportunities to land or just keep, skirting on the outside. I think that, Davis is going to move forward, land big shots, get control time. So I don't agree with the line movement here. I do like Mike Davis at -140, and I think he gets the job done. And the next one here we're going to be talking about is going to be Shamil Gaziev -360 on the comeback. We've got Thomas Peterson +260. Now, this is an absolutely sloppy heavyweight fight here between these 2 guys. You've got 2 guys that have, multiple flaws in their game and 2 guys that are very hittable on the feet. So this already just brings a ton of volatility to this fight. When you're looking at a fight like that, where you've got 2 guys who are going to be brawling it out, or just going to be swinging, slugging it out, especially at heavyweight with limited defense. And you start to look, and now you see one guy at -360, -380 at some books. That's where it starts to lean you one way or the other. Now, you do have Gaziev, who is coming off a victory over Dontel Mays. He goes out there, gets the win. Prior to that, I thought was such a bad showing against Rosenstruck. Now, this is a fight here where we did bet Rosenstruck at +170. We were able to cash in that spot there, but everything that I thought about Gaziev pretty much came true in that fight there, where I am just not impressed with Gaziev. I'm just not impressed with what he does. That was, he had multiple issues there, where the first one was his takedown ability. Rosenstruck's a guy who can be taken down. Rosenstruck is a guy that has vulnerabilities of just being taken down and not finding opportunities to get back to his feet. And he just wasn't able to implement that game plan in that fight. I think that's a little bit of a red flag. The other one was, if you remember, Gaziev really kind of bulldozed forward looking for a takedown and went, face first into the cage. At this level of fighting, you don't see that. You don't see that shit anywhere. You don't see that anywhere. I mean, not even in PFL level and Bellator level, you don't see that kind of stuff. So the fact that he did that, I thought was really ugly. And then also the fact that, his cardio, he's a guy that doesn't show good cardio, who can fall off a cliff as soon as things start to get going for him. I do think that's going to be opportunities here for Peterson to maybe have success. Now, Peterson is a guy who's going to be relentless. Now, he is not the highest level guy either, but again, he's also not -360. But he's a guy that's going to be relentless. He's going to push forward. He's going to look to utilize the wrestling, and I think he's going to continually make Gaziev work. Now, Gaziev is a guy that, prior to the UFC was really just bullying guys. He's very big. He definitely has physicality to him as well. But, if he can't put you away early, it's going to be a slop fest. Further this fight goes, I think it favors, Peterson. Even if it just gets out of the first round, I think Peterson has really an opportunity here to find success as this fight goes on, because I think the key to him is just keeping Gaziev working. Even if he's shooting for takedowns, keep him working. Push him up against a fence, dirty box, keep him working, because you're going to see that if he keeps working, Gaziev really falls off a cliff overall. So again, this line to me is wide. I think it's a dog or pass spot here. I don't really see the value or even parlaying Gaziev. I think there's just too many red flags for him. Again, Peterson, not the highest level guy, but I do think at a +260 tag, I do think that it is worth a little bit of a sprinkle there on him in that spot. So I'm going Thomas Peterson +260. So there you have it for UFC Saudi Arabia. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. I've got plays up right now. Again, If you want to get $10 off for this card, use Kick10 at checkout. You get $10 off this weekend's card. And with that being said, we have a lot to talk about coming up over the next couple of months. Endless fights, a lot of great cards, title fights, pay-per-view. So time to lock in and let's cash.